A husband dies. His body was washed, wrapped, prepared for cremation. Family members gather around the funeral pyre. Prayers are spoken. Offerings are made. The flames are ready. Then something extraordinary happens. His widow steps forward, not to say goodbye, not to place flowers, not to watch from a distance. She is expected to enter the fire, and in some cases throughout history, she did. This ritual became known as Sati. To many modern people, it appears almost impossible to understand. Why would any society ask this of a grieving widow? Why would families allow it? Why would communities celebrate it? And perhaps most unsettling of all, why did some women accept it? To answer those questions, we must go far deeper than religion alone. Welcome to the strange root. Behind every extreme ritual, every act of sacrifice, and every tradition that demands the ultimate price lies a deeper story about power, status, fear, and the stories humans tell themselves. Today, we uncover the strange root of Sati, the widow and the fire. Sati was a funeral practice historically associated with certain Hindu communities in parts of India. The basic ritual was simple. A husband died, his body was cremated, his widow joined him on the funeral pyre. Sometimes immediately, sometimes during a ceremony, surrounded by family, priests, and community members. The image became one of the most controversial practices in Indian history. Yet, Sati was never practiced everywhere. Most widows in Indian history never experienced it. Many Hindu communities rejected it entirely. Even during periods when it existed, it remained concentrated in specific regions and social groups. This distinction matters because Sati was not a universal tradition. It was a particular solution to a particular social problem, and that problem was much larger than death, the dangerous position of a widow. To understand Sati, we must first understand the position of widows in many traditional societies. A widow occupied an uncomfortable space. Her husband was gone, yet she remained. She often depended on her husband's family. She could become an economic responsibility. She might claim inheritance rights. She might remarry. She might form new alliances. She represented uncertainty. And traditional societies often fear uncertainty. The death of a husband did not merely create grief, it created social and economic complications. Questions about property, inheritance, status, family reputation. The widow stood at the center of all of them. When sacrifice becomes virtue, but economics alone cannot explain Sati. Many societies have inheritance disputes. Few ask widows to die. Something more powerful was happening. The most effective systems of control rarely rely entirely on force. They rely on belief. Over time, Sati became wrapped in ideas of devotion, purity, loyalty, and spiritual merit. A widow who entered the flames could be praised as the ideal wife, the perfect wife, the loyal wife, the wife whose devotion extended beyond death itself. Songs were written, stories were told, memorials were erected. Entire communities sometimes celebrated these women. And this is where the practice becomes especially revealing. The ritual transformed sacrifice into honor, obedience into virtue, death into glory. The woman was not merely dying, she was being elevated, at least in the eyes of society. And that made resistance far more difficult. The power of public expectation. Imagine losing your husband. Imagine being surrounded by relatives, priests, neighbors, community leaders. all telling you the same thing, that your sacrifice would bring honor, that your devotion would be remembered forever, that your family would gain respect, that your husband's soul would benefit, that history would remember you as virtuous. How voluntary does a choice remain under such circumstances? This question has fueled debate for generations. Some women undoubtedly resisted, some were coerced, some were forced. Others may have genuinely believed in the ideals surrounding the ritual, but belief itself does not emerge in a vacuum. Societies shape what people consider noble, what they consider shameful, what they consider worth dying for: property, power, and reputation. Beneath the spiritual language lay another reality: property, land, inheritance, family wealth. A widow who remained alive could sometimes claim rights. She could influence how property was distributed. She could alter family dynamics. Her existence had consequences. Sati could remove those complications. This does not mean every case was motivated by greed. History is rarely that simple. But economic incentives often reinforce cultural beliefs. The ideal widow happened to be the widow who no longer created social or financial uncertainty, and that coincidence deserves attention. The colonial battle. By the 18th and 19th centuries, Sati became the subject of intense controversy. Indian reformers such as Raja Ram Mohan Roy criticized the practice and pushed for change. British colonial authorities also opposed it. In 1829, Sati was formally banned under British rule. Yet even this story is complicated. The ban reflected genuine humanitarian concerns, but it also became part of a larger colonial narrative. British officials frequently used sati as evidence that Indian society required Western intervention and civilizing. The practice became a political weapon. One side used it to defend tradition, the other used it to justify empire. Meanwhile, widows themselves often disappeared from the center of the conversation. Why did it survive? Even after legal bans, isolated cases continued to appear. Why? Because laws can prohibit behavior. They cannot instantly erase beliefs. The fears that helped sustain sati remained: the pressure of reputation, the fear of dishonor, the desire for social approval, the willingness to place collective ideals above individual lives. These forces have existed in many cultures. Not just India, different societies express them differently, but the underlying mechanisms are remarkably familiar. The strange root. At first glance, sati appears to be about widowhood. Look closer. It is really about sacrifice. Human societies have always admired sacrifice. The soldier who dies for a nation, the martyr who dies for a faith, the parent who sacrifices everything for family. Sacrifice can inspire, it can unite communities, it can create meaning. But sacrifice becomes dangerous when societies begin deciding who should sacrifice and for whom. That is where virtue can become coercion, where honor can become pressure, where devotion can become control. The strange root. Perhaps the most unsettling lesson of sati is not that people were cruel. History contains many cruel practices. The deeper lesson is that human beings are remarkably capable of transforming suffering into virtue. We create stories that make sacrifice meaningful. We celebrate those who endure pain for a higher cause. And sometimes, those stories become so powerful that questioning them feels impossible. The widow enters the fire. The crowd calls it honor. The community calls it devotion. The family calls it duty. And somewhere beneath all those words stands a human being, a person whose life became less important than the ideal she was expected to represent. The ritual was never only about death. It was about the power of society to shape what people believe is worth dying for. And that is the strange root of Sati. If this exploration into one of history's most difficult traditions made you reflect on honor, sacrifice, and social pressure, subscribe to The Strange Root and join us as we continue uncovering humanity's hidden forces. Until next time, take care and stay curious.